and we're still out in the wilderness. But more about that in a few minutes. Welcome to the Sandton Times podcast, episode 29, week 42 of 2020. Can you believe it? We've almost done 30 episodes of the Sandton Times podcast, and I'm so excited to see that it's been growing from strength to strength. We're out and about again this week, but before we get into that, let's go into some of the formalities. If you want to get in touch with this podcast, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect with us on Telegram and social media using @SandtonTimes. If you want to visit the blog, you can visit sandtontimes.co.za, and we're working on a bit of a refresh on the blog, so hopefully before the end of the year we would have done the full migration, moved onto a whole new look and feel and platform. It's a lot of work, but I think it'll be worth it. If you want to subscribe, share, and leave a review or rating for this podcast, you can do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Overcast, Anchor, YouTube. I mean, you pick a platform. We are on 8 different podcast platforms plus on YouTube, so there's actually no excuse to be able to get hold of this podcast and listen to it every single week. And if you've been subscribing, if you've been sharing, if you've been liking and leaving comments for this podcast on whatever platform you prefer, thank you very much. The support is highly appreciated. You think it's going to take me a few seconds, a few minutes to do this? Does it really matter? Who really cares? It does matter, and we do care. So if you haven't done so, take a moment right now. I mean, while you're listening, you can just quickly do that, and it makes the world of difference to ensure that we keep growing this podcast and keep making it better and going from strength to strength. So welcome to our listeners from Greater Sandton and beyond. And this week as well, we had people listening from Colombia, we had people listening from the United States, from the United Kingdom. So I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land. And don't forget, DeLonghi's running a fantastic social media campaign where you could win a Perfecta Evo bean to cup coffee machine. All you have to do is take a picture, a selfie of yourself with a milk mustache. So if you're having a latte, if you're having a cappuccino, if you're having something with a bit of milk froth on it, take a really, really deep sip. Get that little milk mustache. You know which one I'm talking about. Take a selfie, share it on Instagram, you tag @DeLonghi_SA, and you use the hashtag CoffeeLabSA. And you could stand in line to win a Perfecta Evo bean to cup coffee machine. It's going to change your life. Trust me, if you enjoy good coffee, you enjoy it being made properly and well, you want to get one of these machines. And I know there's people out there who are listening to this and going, I never win anything, competitions, I've entered one and didn't win anything. You don't understand. You got to enter to be able to win. Take a few minutes and do it. The closing date is the 20th of November 2020, just before midnight, but don't leave it till the 20th of November. Don't wake up on the 21st of November going, oh shucks, yesterday was the deadline for that coffee machine competition. And you never know, maybe only a few people enter and you could be that lucky person who makes it. Maybe a lot of people enter and you end up being that lucky person. You can't win if you don't enter. So go do it, go win. You'll thank me. You'll thank me afterwards once you've done it and you walk away. And I'd like to hear from you if you do win that coffee machine and you do listen to this podcast, because you owe me a cup. We're going to run this week's podcast a little bit differently. We're going to do it as one great listen. In the past, we've given you 2 parts, so you could listen to half the podcast now and half the podcast later. But it seems like it's getting a little bit lost. I think people are a little bit confused. Sometimes people don't quite catch on that there's a part 1 and a part 2, or they start watching or listening from part 2 and then can't understand why the podcast starts and ends in such a strange way because now they don't find part 1. So just to simplify things, we're going to give you the podcast in one piece on YouTube and on different podcast platforms, and let's see how it goes. It's a big chunk, but some people like that. Some people like to consume a full 60 to 90 minutes in one go, or you can just pause it wherever you want to and then carry on listening or watching whenever you feel like it. But it might just make it a little bit easier in terms of sequence that you have it in one piece. So let's try that. Talking about watching this podcast, if you have access to YouTube, which most of us do, you'll be able to watch and listen to this week's podcast to get a bit of a feel of our surroundings. And this week, instead of just giving you a few shots, we're going to give you highlights from our visit. But I'm not going to reveal too much. You need to go and have a look for yourself on YouTube. So if you're listening to this, hop onto YouTube and you can listen and watch. And there's some really cool clips that we've got, some really fantastic shots that we've taken, a little bit different to what we've done in the previous weeks. But there's just been such really exciting and wonderful things that we've seen that I felt like, you know what, we can't just give you sort of 3 general shots of where we are. You need to kind of just get on the truck or get on the game drive vehicle with us, or kind of go where we went and kind of see some of the stuff. And we'll put that up as a loop so you can watch that while you're listening. If you hear some background ambient noises, this week we are on location at the iconic MalaMala Game Reserve, and for those of you who know or have actually been here, you realize what an absolute treat this is to be able to record from here. So without further ado, let me introduce my first guest for this week's episode. So sitting right opposite me is the general manager here at MalaMala, Vusi Mpanza. Vusi, great to have you on the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
So Vusi, tell me, how's your life changed in 2020, running probably one of South Africa's most well-known and probably the pearl of game lodges?
Wow, it was so devastating. Wow, yeah, really took us by surprise. We didn't expect that. When it started myself, I thought maybe it's just something that's going to take us a few weeks and then it's going to pass and then we're going to go back to our normal lives, but it didn't. It was very, very difficult for all of us. We had to send staff at home. They've been there for 5+ months. Some of them are still at home right now as we speak. So yeah, it was quite devastating.
I mean, just to understand this, I mean, a lot of people know about MalaMala. There's been a lot of people who've always wanted to come here, but it's been very much a lot of international visitors. I mean, that's been your main market, has been overseas. So the moment the borders closed, people couldn't fly here anymore, that entire dynamic changed.
Exactly. Yeah, as you said, we used to host a lot of people from around the world, and then couldn't come through bookings. We have bookings of which we had to cancel all of them, and some of them had been postponed and stuff like that, just waiting to see when we can have them. But yeah, it's been a very difficult time for everyone. 100% occupancy to 0.
Yeah, I can imagine. But
yeah, for sure.
I guess the good news is that MalaMala is open again. It's still around, which is another one of those things.
Yes.
I guess to celebrate.
Yes.
And let's talk about how those dynamics have now changed, what opportunities there are now. You've been operating for a fair amount of time. It's only been recently that you've reopened again.
Yeah, for sure.
And what is business looking like now?
Well, first of all, I would like just to say thank you for our fellow South Africans for coming through. I wasn't too sure that we're going to have the amount of guests that we're having now. And to share this MalaMala magic with our own people, it was amazing, and it is amazing. And we're loving it day by day. And just thank you for that. And yeah, it took me by surprise as well. We had so much bookings, and but now with the protocols and stuff like that, we have to make sure that we don't overcrowd our camps, and but it's working very well. And then it's really very good.
Well, let's understand that. So you've put some very important and regulatory things in place to make sure that people kind of stay healthy. And I mean, the bush, as it is a really great place because there is a lot of space. There's a lot of fresh air. There's a lot of movement.
Yes.
I mean, you're spending a lot of your time outside, which is really fantastic. I mean, even during a lot of the meals that we've had here, we find that we're quite a few meters away from the different tables. So it's not a traditionally claustrophobic place where you feel you're sitting on. But what other things have you put in place now in terms of COVID-19 and making it safe for those people who are quite nervous to venture out into the world?
I'll just start by saying for our staff, we gave them a training before we opened. Fully trained, we issued masks, we have sanitizing stations everywhere. Again, for our game drives, we limited the numbers almost to 4 per vehicle. But if it's a family of 5 traveling together, and then we can put them in one vehicle. So that's one of the matters that we dealt with.
Well, I mean, I think also you've got the most fantastic smelling hand sanitizer. I don't know where you got it from. It comes in these beautiful bottles, and it smells like, it doesn't smell like hand sanitizer, even though it's got all the, the alcohol in it and all the stuff that it needs to do what it needs to do. But you've really kind of made some fantastic touches to it, so
Yeah.
it doesn't feel too awkward, and the fresh air also helps, so you're kind of moving around a lot. Tell us a little more about the South African part now, because you were talking about how fantastic it is to have all these South Africans here.
Yes.
You've gone from almost a virtually 90-100% of international market to 90-100% South African market.
Yes.
How have you made that possible? You've reduced your rates. You've really made it attractive for South Africans to finally experience MalaMala.
Yeah, for sure. We had to reduce our rates to make sure that we accommodate them, and then it's working. I'm not sure if it covers everything, but I think it's enough to keep us afloat in the meantime, because we have salaries, we have suppliers, we have all of that to pay. Because during that time where we had zero guests, then we have to switch off most of our appliances, like your lights. The camp was in the dark, all our fridges off. We just used whatever we needed to use at that time. So now we have to switch on everything. But yeah, I think it's working for both sides for now. Yeah.
So it's really for whatever period of time that these rates are going to be at such a good point for South Africans who want to come visit. So if you are listening, I mean, there's a lot of international visitors that I know are chomping at the bit, sitting somewhere in the world, wanting to come back. You've got your own airstrip, which we saw yesterday when we took a drive around.
Sure.
So you can fly into, I think it's Joburg, and then kind of relay with a smaller plane into MalaMala directly. So you actually never have to get on a car or be on the road, which is amazing. But if you are South African and you've always wanted to experience it, you've literally got the most incredible window period.
Yeah, for sure.
To take advantage of this, to really be, experience MalaMala. That's been around since the 60s, isn't that so?
For sure, yeah. And you know what? The wildlife never disappointed as well. They've been seeing great sightings all around. And you know what? To see people coming back from drive smiling, they said, wow. You never thought you never see that day, you know.
So tell me, the time during the lockdown, camp was empty.
Yes.
Did you find that the animals just came along and suddenly took over? Were you dealing with all kinds of funky things happening in the gardens and on the roofs, or was it quite peaceful?
So luckily, everything was planned well. So we had skeleton staff in camp to look after everything. So most of the guys were at home. So we kept the camp clean and looked after. As always, winter months we always struggle with the elephants coming to camp for greenery, but it's yearly. We deal with that every year, and baboons trashing everything as well. But winter months are a problem when it comes to animals, but we manage that quite well.
What I was also quite interested to see when we walked into MalaMala, having been around for so long, as a lodge, it felt very fresh, very new. You've done some light refurbishments of late.
Yeah, we did. I can't remember the dates, but it was before the lockdown, so we were up and running already when it happened. It was a nice feeling, and I was very grateful to be here, because I was here before the refurbishment and after, so I could see the difference, and then it was worth it.
So if people have been here maybe 5-10 years ago, you'll be surprised when you walk through the front doors.
Exactly.
Not much has changed on the outside, but on the inside I feel like you've got a very contemporary African feel going. It's very clean, very I wouldn't say it's minimalist, but it's definitely very thought through, and it looks really fantastic. And we've also put some pictures up on our social media, and there'll probably be some more pictures going up as well, but have a look at that. I think if you're into that sort of look and feel, I think you'll definitely enjoy the sort of refreshed MalaMala that you've got going. What's your outlook for 2021? I mean, I know it's very difficult to look into the future at the moment, but are you hoping, or is it looking like you're going to start having people come back the moment flights reopen?
Yeah. We are very hopeful, and then the sooner it happens, the better, because a lot of businesses, I think, they're suffering from all of this. As I've said, we still have staff who never returned since March, because we're not running at 100%. So as soon as we have that, then everybody can come back and save their jobs. And I'm just glad to say that we never have to retrench anyone yet, because with the help from government as well, staff were paid every month, and MalaMala as well put something as well to make sure that they have enough to survive. I'll confidently say that each and every staff member, regardless if they're at home or working, they got half the salary if they're sitting at home.
How many people do you employ at MalaMala?
We are over 160 something. I don't have the figures with me right now, but yeah, we are right there, yeah.
So a significant amount of people.
Yeah, it's too much, yeah.
And how many people can you accommodate across the three camps? So you've got MalaMala main camp, you've got Sable camp,
yes,
and then you've got Rattray's camp as well.
Yeah, so we have main camp, which is 19 rooms, and we have Sable camp, which is 7 rooms. We have Rattray's on MalaMala, which is 8 rooms as well. So the difference between these 3 camps, main camp can take all ages, and then Sable can take from the ages of 12 and upwards, and Rattray's camp can take from 16 years old and then upwards, yeah. So, but age doesn't matter if you book the camp exclusively, so and then you can have all ages. Let's say you book Sable, all of it, then you don't have to worry about age. So
if you bring your young kids along, or your old grandmother, everyone can come and can make the best of some incredible sightings. And I think that's quite an important thing. And we'll chat to Bruce, who's your head ranger, a bit later on in this podcast. But I think one of the unique selling points of MalaMala is the game viewing, isn't it?
The game viewing, yes.
What do you think makes it so unique?
Wow. It's like MalaMala will surprise you every day. I've been here 13 years, but I'm still like, wow. Like the other day, we were sitting on a deck here during mealtime, and then saw this giraffe come running, chased by plus 10 lions. Day broad light. So it was just during breakfast time. Then it's amazing to see that. You can't see it everywhere, I think.
and what an experience to have. And
for sure.
Even in the evenings now, when we're walking back to our suite,
yes,
we're also made aware that you might bump into a hippo or into a hyena, and you've got your team who kind of join us for the walk with a torch to make sure that we get to bed in one piece.
Yes.
But the animals are always around, and I mean, they seem to be very accustomed to people being around.
They do, yeah. So the thing is, our camp is not fenced, so animals do come through. Mostly like leopards at night, they do visitors and stuff like that. That's why we have security guards to escort, and they've been trained to do that. And we advise our clients not to walk alone at night, so because we have people to walk them. There's a lot of stories to tell.
You should tell us some of those stories. I'd love to hear some of those stories.
But luckily, no one got hurt because we got everything covered. Yeah, so I think almost like every second day we might have a leopard in camp, but we spot them easily because we have cameras on the pathways to help us look, and then we have, as I've said, the security guards as well to walk us back and forth. So it happened one day where a leopard walked into the lounge. It was winter months, and everyone was in the bar already having some meal. And one of the managers at that time went to the bar to grab something. As he was coming out, I was face to face with the leopard in the lounge. It was quite a story to be shared.
So what do you do in that instance when you encounter a leopard in the lounge? It sounds like the beginning of a joke, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
because you don't expect that. But, I mean, like in the lounge, but outside, yes, we do, and we have a lot of hyenas at the moment that are just walking around, looking for food and stuff like that. But yeah, I would say if you follow the rules and all that, you'll be safe. Not to walk alone at night and this and that, but it just brings a smile to my face, like when I think about it. Yeah, but it's been like, even the other day we had 4 lionesses in front of the lounge as well. It was around 6 o'clock in the evening, and then everyone started to come back from game drive, and we had to radio them and say, hey, please take your time there, we're still dealing with the lions in camp. So luckily we don't try to scare them. They just let them walk around, and then they left the camp. So yeah, we respect them, they respect us as well. So
well, I think that makes your job as a general manager so interesting when you're running a lodge
compared
to a 5-star hotel in a big city.
Yeah.
Is that a 5-star hotel in a big city doesn't have to deal with these kind of issues.
No.
Tell us a bit more about your career, Vusi. How long have you been doing this for? Where did you start your career?
Okay, yeah, I joined MalaMala in 2007. It was June, and I started in the housekeeping department. I was cleaning one of the lounges here, and then I went over to the train, and then I became the head housekeeper, and there was plus minus 30 staff members that I have to manage. And then from there, and then I just grabbed every opportunity and learned as much as I could. And then I was promoted to camp supervisor. And it was quite a learning curve for me, and then it opened my eyes and then gave me, even strength to learn more. And so and then there I am. I was assistant general manager, and then I had to work with incredible people around myself, and then I've learned so much, and I'm still learning today, and it's quite amazing. I don't see myself doing anything else now because I love this thing.
You're also doing a lot with the community around the reserve.
Yes.
Do you want to maybe just touch on some of those projects and some of those things that you're working on?
We have a trust that is developing the communities around us, and there is a community that is handling that. So MalaMala is contributing towards that project. And then the other day we went to open a kitchen for one of the schools around at one of the high schools. I think it's called MalaMala High School. And I was there to see it by myself, So it was so amazing to see that the joy in the kids' faces. Now they'll have food from a decent kitchen, and there's another project running with the interns. We had 6 interns with us for 6 months. We rotate them amongst the departments, to teach them, because they were from out of the training facility, and then they came here just to learn the practical side of things, and it was amazing. And then we had a second batch after the 6 months lapsed, and then due to the corona thing, and then we had to send them back home. But I think we're going to resume soon, as soon as we are stable.
Well, Vusi, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you. We're still going to be chatting to more people in and around MalaMala to get a full picture of all that is on offer and all that you can experience at MalaMala. And we're excited to be hosting this episode at this world-renowned and also South African-renowned game lodge. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just a big thank you to our South African people. Book yourself a place here and then come and have fun with us, and then you'll never be disappointed.
Right, as always, we need to keep up with the latest happenings in Sandton, so let's get out there and go through our stories making headlines in Sandton for this week. And as always, this update is brought to you by megaflightdeals.co.za, your one-stop for non-stop cheap flights. And a bit of drama in the e-hailing space this week. Drivers with e-hailing service Bolt, based in Bryanston, have been on strike this week, with various drama unfolding. EWN reporting that drivers demanded that the industry be regulated, saying they had been exploited for far too long now. Earlier this week, top management at Bolt and Bryanston refused to come out to accept the drivers' memorandum. The drivers then blocked the main entrance, refusing to leave, saying that they were not going anywhere until they showed up. But drivers were forced to open the entrance after more police were deployed to this strike. Then the following day, drivers were slowly making their way back to Zoo Lake from the second day of striking, when they clashed with police who opened fire with rubber bullets. And striking drivers said they were going back to the drawing board and seeing how they're going to deal with this and maybe hopefully resolve this as well. Sandton is a popular property choice among millennials. This is Business Tech reports that millennial buyers are piling into the property market despite a preference of renting. Samuel Seif, chairman of the Seif Property Group, said that the young buyers in the country are in the perfect storm due to record low interest rates and favorable lending conditions. Seif's first home buyer areas, especially in main urban areas, all report a surge in buying activity over the last 3 months, largely driven by the under 35-year-old market. Charles Vinning, managing director of Seif Sandton, said that the apartments are especially ideal for first-time buyers with a broad choice of suburbs to buy in. Then there's a Cape Town bar under investigation. I know this is not much of a Sandton story, but I think there's something that applies to all of us anywhere in South Africa, especially as we go through this pandemic. News 24 reporting that 47 school pupils who visited the Tin Roof bar in Claremont, Cape Town, had tested positive for the virus after a night out at the venue. The number of COVID-19 cases has now risen to 63 from those 47. It is alleged that there was a violation of the required safety protocols, and Western Cape Premier Alan Wind has called for an investigation. Wind said health teams had contacted all the schools affected and were ensuring that the necessary protocols were being followed. The Citizen reports that in a statement, Tin Roof's James Trutter said they looked after their patrons and parents were happy to send their children there. He said they followed all hygiene protocols, including temperature scanning, writing contact details in a book, and requiring that masks were worn to and from the bar. All staff wore masks, and hands must also be sanitized while buying drinks.
The next generation is here. Today is the beginning of a new era for iPhone. Today, we're bringing 5G to iPhone.
Yeah, they have a new range of devices from Apple announced. CNET recapping that Apple released its 4-model iPhone 12 lineup, the first major revamp of the iPhone's design since the 2017 iPhone X, which introduced face unlocking and better screen technology. This year they sport an array of colors, more models, and 5G wireless support across the range. In addition to the HomePod mini smart speaker, the MagSafe wireless charging system for the iPhone, and a stealth release of the Beats Flex wireless headphones were also included in this release. And then Black Friday is around the corner. Don't forget, South Africans can expect Black Friday 2020, which takes place on 27 November, to be much bigger than previously, with more online specials that run for longer. This is the view of two industry experts, including Parcel Ninja CEO Justin Drennan and Africa business manager Anita Erasmus, reports My Broadband. Game and Macro recently announced they will be running Black Friday deals throughout November 2020 instead of restricting them to a 5-day period. So we're going to keep an eye on that, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from the Black Friday front as we go deeper into November. I'm thrilled to have Amy Todd sitting right opposite me. She's the Rattray camp manager and also currently food and beverage manager at the main camp. Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Amy, tell us a little bit more about MalaMala. I mean, we are talking about these different camps, and if people have never been here, what makes these different camps so different?
All right, so MalaMala main camp is obviously the original big camp that was being run by the Rattray's family for many years. And then there's a little smaller camp that works off of main camp, which is called Sable Camp. And then we've got Rattray's camp, which is where I'm normally based. And that's a slightly smaller, 8 bedrooms, little bit more luxurious feel, no children there. So yeah, it's just a smaller, more intimate camp as opposed to main camp, which is definitely where you'd have your bigger groups, family orientated, probably a little bit more flexible, I would imagine.
And Rattray's also seems very central in terms of the park. It's sort of almost slap bang in the middle.
Yeah, it is. It's about a 10-minute drive from main camp where we are now. So there's different properties that make up MalaMala, the original farms. Rattray's is on the next one down from where we are now at MalaMala, but yeah, very central.
But what I think is great about both Rattray's and MalaMala is you're looking out onto this fantastic riverbed, which has different levels of water depending on what time of the year you come. And you've got, if you're lucky, some great sightings. I mean, you don't even have to go anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the suites and the rooms at all the MalaMala camps pretty special, is that they all are river facing. So I would say no matter where you end up staying, you're going to have that beautiful view over the Sand River, which, yes, changes every day. Great game viewing, beautiful bird life, just magical peace to be able to sit out there and have your privacy in the bush.
Well, let me tell us a little bit more about yourself. How long have you been involved at MalaMala? And kind of what's your role in the camp? And that's probably changed quite a bit as well in 2020.
Yeah, so that's changed a huge amount. I've been working in the bush camp scene for about 10 years. I only started at MalaMala about a year and a half ago, and I was employed as the Rattray's camp manager along with my partner Bruce. So we have been managing that camp up until now. And then obviously with COVID kicking in and a reset and a rechange of all sorts of stuff, we've moved up to the main camp. And I have been developing and working on creating a food and beverage position. We've obviously had to change all of our dining from buffet to a la carte, and the way the kitchen now runs in terms of health and safety is all had to change. So that's what I've been working on at the moment. But I am keeping fingers crossed that Rattray's will open soon and I'll go back to my beloved little camp down the road.
Although, I mean, as hesitant as you are about food and beverage, you actually come from a chefing background.
Yeah,
I mean,
do.
Kitchen's sort of your second nature.
Oh, I know it better than I probably know camp management. So I trained at Silwood Cooking School in Cape Town, and then I worked as a chef for about 7-8 years, and I've only moved into management about 3.5-4 years ago. So yes, food and kitchen is definitely what I know more than anything.
So Amy, once again, for those people who have never been to MalaMala, and it's obviously such a great opportunity for a lot of South Africans to now experience the space, how would you describe the food? I mean, if you had to look at the menu across the board,
So I think what's really special about MalaMala's food, and probably is different to many other places, is that we really believe that if you've spent a long day out in the bush, you want to come home, you probably want to eat an early dinner, you're tired, you're getting up the next morning, nothing for what we believe would be more desirable to a guest is then a plate of home-cooked, well-cooked comfort food. So we try and use really seasonal produce from the local area and just complete, well-cooked, delicious comfort food.
And what I quite liked about the way you'd structured your meals as well, which I thought was quite interesting, and especially for those people who've done a lot of safari, who like going away to the Kruger, a lot of the other private game reserves, is that you end up getting into this sort of routine where you think, my goodness, if I stay here for one more night, I might actually burst, because you generally find that it's an early morning game drive, you might have some coffee or some rusks on the way there, then you get back, you have breakfast, then before you know it, it's lunchtime, you're having lunch, then you're off to your next, or you might have a high tea, then you're off to your next game drive, and then you're back for dinner. And if you do that sort of 4 days in a row, you're ready to fall apart because you can't eat anymore. But what I really liked what you guys have done is that you've kind of done sort of an early morning game drive, and before that, a couple of drinks, maybe some rusks or some muffins. Then you have sort of a brunch. You don't necessarily have to have a lunch or anything like that, but then you've got sort of a nice high tea, and then it's dinner in the evening. So it feels like you kind of have a chance to digest and recover in between all your game drives.
Yes, well, I mean, you're getting back so late. You're getting back at like 10 o'clock-ish. So by the time you've eaten brunch, which is 10:30, 11, I don't think many people would stomach the thought of now coming through at 12:30 to sit down to lunch. So we used to do lunch, and if the hours change and we do breakfast before game drive, which we often do for our international market in the winter months, it's obviously too cold to head out in the morning, then we would do an earlier breakfast, lunch, and a smaller tea. But for these, what we're doing now with game drive early, staying out longer, which is definitely what the South African market want to do, it just makes no sense to have lunch. The waste is huge. So we've bulked up our high tea, which seems to be very well received. It's beautiful afternoon time on the deck. Obviously our bar is open with our afternoon tea. It doesn't just have to be strictly tea and coffee. And then you come back for a nice dinner, either in the boma or on the deck under the stars, or we try and change our dining environments up as much as we can.
How do you feel the menu might have changed, or maybe hasn't changed, now that you've got almost 100% South African audience versus an international audience? Do you find that there's a difference in flavor profile, or that they're looking for different things?
No, we've changed it slightly, but no, a lot of the recipes that are served at MalaMala are old family recipes that have been served in the kitchen here for multiple years. So we try and not change it up. Also our cooks we try and employ mostly from the community for a lot of upliftment. So we need to remember that a lot of our chefs in the kitchen haven't had any sort of formal training. So we really do try and keep with whatever we do cook, even if it's simple. It is the most delicious chicken pie, or the most well-cooked piece of, sirloin, or the most delicious oxtail and creamy mashed potato. But I also think in this day and age, especially now with COVID, people don't want their food fiddled with or manhandled. And I know a lot of people will come here and say, it's so nice not to have the gels and the foams, and that, your carrot looks like a carrot, your broccoli tastes like broccoli, it's not pureed and jellied. And so, we try not to fiddle with it. It is what it is. It's wholesome, good, all-round comfort family meals, which, for the type of guests that come through here, international or South African, we get a lot of families. So we just find it really works, and it's unique. It's different that you can come here and have, the MalaMala chicken pot pie, which is often recipes are asked for. It's been served on the menu for years, or the 7-seed bread, or the oxtail in the boma with the fire, or you got to eat for your environment, I think.
Have you also found that you've maybe had to consider doing more room service with COVID-19? Or not really? Are people really happy just to kind of congregate?
Yeah, we're quite reluctant on the room service side of things, just because we feel that that's an extra person now going into your room, which has been sanitized, disinfected. You've got your one designated housekeeper throughout your stay, and then it's only you going in as the guest. So we are trying to steer away from it as much as possible, just in terms of keeping, foot traffic in and out of a room to a minimum. Our deck is huge. We can really space our tables out 1.5, 2 meters. Obviously, if there is a request for it, we're not going to, our guest experience has to come first. But for health and safety things in terms of COVID at the moment, we're trying, or we haven't since opening done any. There is sometimes a demand, pre-COVID, a couple wants to have a private dinner on their deck, which we'll happily do, or they'd like some, coffee and whatever sent to their rooms, which we're happy again to do. But we're trying to not, just given the health and safety of Corona.
Well, what I thought was quite interesting as well is that you have this very fluid environment when it comes to not only just the food, but I think the schedules in general. So if you've got avid photographers, avid wildlife viewers who want to stay out a little bit longer, or they want to maybe go into the bush a bit earlier, they don't have to kind of be back at a certain time because they're going to miss the breakfast rush or the lunchtime gong or whatever it is. You seem to be quite accommodating and quite sort of flexible with that.
Yeah, we're completely flexible. We want to, we want our guests to have the best time. We'll tailor make as much as we can. So if guests want to head out earlier, and take some stuff out into the bush, we can organize little wraps and fruit skewers and little pots of yogurt that can either go out with you or be linked out to you at a later stage. Same goes, you're out there all day, you're a photographer, lions are doing something fantastic, you don't want lunch, your ranger can radio and we can send out some sandwiches or, a pasta salad or whatever. So, no, completely flexible. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's coming here to see the wildlife and the magic of MalaMala, and if that means you've got to be out there all day to do that, then we're happy to work around the schedule of what the guests would like to do.
Awesome. Now, you've been around here for quite a bit, and I think you have fantastic stories within your portfolios, but I think just being part of the wildlife and being part of the whole environment, you must have some pretty interesting stories or some pretty great fireside stories that you could probably share about things that you've encountered or things that you've seen with wildlife.
Yes.
Whilst you've been here.
Well, especially now during lockdown. So up until about a month ago, before MalaMala camp opened, myself and Bruce were down at Rattray. It's pretty much just the two of us with two other staff. And so when you're in this dead quiet camp, suddenly a lot of animals that are not normally there come sniffing around. So we have had some amazing in-camp experiences. A few weeks ago, went to go pop slippers on in the evening, looked out my bedroom, and probably out the window about 1.5 meters was a female leopard, completely relaxed. And Bruce had walked from the back of the camp, and I could see that they were going to bump into each other. This leopard did nothing, just looked at Bruce, turned, walked away. We jumped in a vehicle, followed it, but we had a game viewing of a leopard right, 3 meters from our back door, which was pretty cool. So
it's absolutely awesome.
We are very lucky.
And part of management's job as well, which you wouldn't probably experience if you were working sort of in a resort or in a sort of 5-star hotel in town, is also that you have some very odd jobs that you have to do. I mean, you were talking about the leopard, that just rocked up. Sometimes they bring something with them. Maybe they've devoured an impala or something.
Yes,
There's a lot of cleaning up.
We have had it before at Rattray's. This was whilst we had guests. They were all out on game drive, and our night patrolman came running. It was early evening, about just gone dark, so just after 6ish. Came running and said, "Oh no, there's two leopard in the rotunda. They're fighting." So Bruce, who obviously used to be a ranger, ran and had a look. And we found that these leopard had moved round from the back of the camp to the front onto the Sand River bank, and they had a carcass in a tree which they were fighting over, and the carcass then fell. And we just had this panic of like, oh my goodness, our guests are going to close down, and here's two leopards fighting over a carcass. So when two of the rangers got back, they had to, very discreetly, without interrupting any, you don't want to affect the animal's behavior or place, move the carcass just over the fence, but still an exact line of where it had dropped. But some odd jobs for sure.
Very cool. So Amy, it's obviously a great time for South Africans to come and visit MalaMala. It's not normally your audience. I know you've got very much an international demand for this space. Why do you think South Africans should take this opportunity and come and visit MalaMala Game Reserve? I
think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to come here at this rate and see world-class game viewing, the history behind MalaMala and this property, and it's just the most magical place. The game viewing is out of this world, and for anyone who's an avid bush lover, this is the place you want to come and spend hours up and down the Sand River. You will see everything.
Well, Amy Todd, I couldn't think of a better place to put a full stop and end it at. So there you have it, Amy Todd, who looks after Rattray's camp, but is also at the moment looking after the food and beverage. And if you see her, make sure that she serves you one of that chicken pot pie. We've had one; it's really fantastic. Amy, thanks so much for making the time and being part of this podcast.
Me. Thank you very much.
Well, the next interview is the one that I think people are always excited about because there's always some good stories to tell. And I'm joined by Bruce Missing, who's the head ranger here at MalaMala Game Reserve. Bruce, thank you so much for jumping behind the microphone. And just maybe give us a bit of a sense of how did you become a ranger and how did you get involved with MalaMala?
Thanks for coming out and coming to see the place. It's been a long time since we've had guests, seeing some friendly faces around. But I've always wanted to be a conservationist, throughout my life, and not always having opportunities to get into the bush. But when the opportunity arose to study something, I chose nature conservation, and that really just opened the door for me, at least. Then, once I finished my diploma in nature conservation, I moved to the Cape, where I did research on leopards for 3 years. I then did a short stint of doing research on bats, on the impacts of wind farms on bats. And then one of my best mates growing up, who I'd known since I was 4 years old, he had started at MalaMala, and I was busy on the bat project, and he said, "Hey, they're looking for rangers," and MalaMala's always been the sort of unicorn of the safari industry, and I sent my resume in straight away and had the interview and sort of never looked back. It's been 4.5 years now here, and every day is different, and someone like me with a short attention span, it's great that you can have no 2 days are the same. Like I say, I haven't looked back. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, Bruce, you must have seen some incredible things over the last 4 odd years. Maybe you can share some of those great stories. This is the stuff that campfires are made of, eh?
There's I'll try not mention too many names, but no, it's definitely my passion. It's always been wildlife, and the wildlife experiences that I've had here, going from sort of elephants giving birth, finding leopards with cubs on their, when they're only a few weeks old, finding lions with cubs when they're only a few days old, seeing things like pangolins, cheetahs, wild dogs. Everything's very doom and gloom in the conservation world, and just to be able to be a part of something where you're able to witness all of these animals in their natural habitats doing what they're supposed to be doing, every day is very special. The most exciting thing I've seen is the next thing I get to see, sort of thing.
What do you think makes the game viewing so unique? It's something that a lot of people talk about. They say, if you come to MalaMala, you're going to see game like no other. And you're thinking, well, what is that formula? It's the same bush, it's the same animals. What is that magic sauce that makes it work?
Really, the heart of the property is the Sand River. We've got 24 kilometers of river frontage that runs through the property, teamed up with an unfenced boundary where we are sandwiched between the greater Kruger National Park and then the Sabi Sands, which is also quite synonymous with all of its wildlife viewing, topped with a somewhat less or a lower vehicle density, allowing people to actually stay at sightings for longer periods of time, and having the rangers that have the independence on their drives to take you to places where you're not restricted by time, and that you can spend lots of time at the sightings. You can off-road and go and see where these animals actually are and follow them, and so really get into the belly of the beast and spend time with them while they're doing what they've naturally been doing all their lives. On top of that, MalaMala converted from hunting to game viewing and photographic safaris in 1965. And hunting can have its impacts on animal behavior. So having the last 55 years with no rifles being pointed at these animals, they are very relaxed around our presence. And as you saw last night with the lions, they don't really interact with us at all or engage with us at all. We're not a threat to them, and we're not food for them. So we're just the sort of fly on the wall, where we get to view them with all their natural behaviours and nuances. You don't quite get at all the other reserves in the country. Having fences and having other activities such as hunting or any other commercial activities can change that animal behaviour, and so we've managed to sort of isolate that and get the best out of it.
Well, let's chat about that. You're talking about this lion encounter that we had, and for the people that weren't with us on this trip, Bruce took us straight into our afternoon game drive on arrival, and very quickly, actually, we managed to locate this pride of lions that were, for most, sort of fast asleep and just taking a lazy afternoon nap on the riverbed. And as we were sitting there and waiting and kind of seeing how this was going to develop, they suddenly all got up. Dominated by female lionesses. There were 2 male lions, and suddenly this pride started making a move and was darting between riverbeds, between sort of wood forest areas, through the bush, and were kind of on a mission to find something. We never saw them sort of engage with any buck or anything, but you could see that they were ready for a night out, looking for food, and they were passing our car left and right. I mean, within not even meters. It was probably less than a meter away from us. And I must say, it was an unbelievably daunting experience. At the same time, it was unbelievably exciting. But just to have an African male and female lion pass you so close by, and they were also signaling. We also heard some of them sort of doing these sort of very deep sort of growls, which you were explaining sort of is communication between different lions who are in the same pride or that might be related. And it is just the most, I suppose, frightening and magical thing you'll ever get to hear. If you've never been in the bush, I mean, that's something you want to experience. If you have been in the bush, I mean, we've done this for many, many years, you know, obviously having grown up in South Africa, been to many of the different reserves, but it is just always so invigorating when you experience that kind of encounter with, you know, they call it the king of the beasts. I mean, you know, a lion pride. And Bruce, what would you say makes a ranger at MalaMala so different maybe to some of the encounters people have had maybe with other rangers when they go to other sort of game reserves?
Well, in MalaMala, the rangers, they really take ownership of the experience of the guests. Once you get handed over to your ranger after your orientation, you're really at their sort of at their mercy. And we put a lot of training in. It takes 3 months, regardless of your previous experience. It takes 3 months for a ranger to train up to be proficient on the property to take guests out. We also don't work with trackers, which is quite different to a lot of the other reserves. But once again, that ranger then has all the ownership of the game drive. All of our rangers take part in all the conservation work on the property, from anti-poaching to animal management, rescues, you know, anything in between. So we all have an innate love for the property, and you know, whenever we get a guest on our vehicle, we just want to show them what makes MalaMala so special for us. Coupled with the interaction like we had with the lions, and sometimes you get the same with leopards and elephants and whatnot. You know, these personalities that you start to experience over time, you develop a kinship towards them. And once again, you want to take these people that are now on your vehicle, and you want to show them this experience that you've had before with these lions, and sort of repeat it, and then open their eyes to what are actually the possibilities of in terms of viewing these animals. I think all of our evolution, you know, throughout history has always been to be very scared of them. And, everybody's very justified in being scared next to a big male lion. But as I said, their behavior has changed somewhat, where our interactions with them has changed, to the point that, like I say, we're just a fly on the wall. They walk past us completely sort of ambivalent to us, to our presence. And like I say, you can sit there and watch them hunting and sometimes mating, sometimes interacting with their youngsters without having any impact on their behavior.
Well, one of the things you mentioned on one of our drives, which I thought was also quite interesting, is that MalaMala seems to be very much structured around a game drive first, hotel hospitality sort of secondary, versus when you go to a lot of other lodges, it's very much sort of the lodge has all the sort of bells and whistles and you know, all the entertainment you can imagine, and then it's sort of like, and if you feel like a game drive, you can go for a game drive. You've really managed to create the game drive experience as sort of the center of the universe, and everything else, which is still a 5-star, which is still an incredible experience, kind of falls in secondary to the game drive. So I was discussing with Amy that if you want to stay out longer, you can stay out longer. If you go in earlier, you want to go in earlier. And if you've got specific needs as a guest, which I thought was also quite interesting, it's important to highlight, because you will then sort of almost custom make or bespoke that experience towards that guest.
Yeah, so it's always very important for any guest that arrives here to communicate their expectations. And we can as I say, the rangers do have quite a lot of independence to create that experience for their guests. So we cater for a lot of photographers, and a lot of them will come here with a sort of bucket list of shots that they want to get, and it's then up to the ranger to create that experience. And as you said, you know, where the food and beverage and hospitality sort of side is maybe not secondary, but complementary towards the game viewing experience, you know, so allowing us more time in the bush. And if you want to go back into the bush, you can go straight back after breakfast, or if you don't want to come back for breakfast, and we can arrange packed lunches, and just so that the guest gets as much time in the bush as possible, or as much time as they would like in the bush, to really see what you've come here for. With our traditional market being mostly overseas clientele, people come to the bush to be in the bush, not to be in a restaurant or a spa or a gym or something like that. So a lot of our operation is geared towards, like I say, spending as much time in the bush as possible, and seeing as much of the wildlife as you can in the short space of time that you may or may not be here.
One of the other things that I thought was quite awesome as well is when we went onto the actual vehicle, is that you've also got this really cool configuration where you've now got sort of two seats left and right, sort of you're on the one side or the other side of the vehicle, and then you've put in these center consoles, almost like it almost looked like a mini bar, but it's not a mini bar. It's kind of like a really snazzy box that you can open up, and you've got your blankets in there if you're doing early morning game drives, and you've kind of individually wrapped those because, obviously with COVID-19, people have, that sort of peace of mind that each of these things are sort of individually washed, and you're not getting someone else's blanket from the night before from the game drive. And then you've also got these really nice sort of steel bottles that everyone gets, so you can sort of refill your own water. So you're doing quite a bit in terms of also making sure that you're kind of also practicing what you preach in terms of being observant of nature, and sort of throwing more plastic bottles into the universe, and kind of looking after nature as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, MalaMala has been the oldest game reserve of its kind in the world, and there has been a progression in how we operate, and as you highlighted the vehicles, that is something that's come from years of experience of knowing that bench seats, for example, were particularly uncomfortable. So how do we gear those vehicles to be more comfortable for the guests to, once again, aid in spending as much time in the bush as possible? And that seat configuration was something that we developed and started to introduce, and has worked very well. The seats are also interchangeable, at least the boxes are interchangeable. They can come up, we can put more seats in, we can put photographic rails on the rigs. We really can customize those vehicles to the needs of the guests at the time. Bringing anything into a game reserve, it has to go somewhere, whether it's got to be transported somewhere, dumped somewhere, or whatever the case is. So we've really pushed our waste management sort of practices to try and recycle as much as we can. We eliminated the plastic bottles for the guests, because if you've got 6 people on a vehicle and everybody's drinking a bottle of water twice a day, that's 12 bottles a day. You can have anywhere up to sort of 15, 16 vehicles on the property at any time. So that it ended up being a lot of plastic. So we introduced the metal bottles, so that each guest arrives, they get their own personalised metal bottle, and we've got water dispensing machines all over the camp. And you can choose between still or sparkling water, and it's all cleaned, and it actually comes from the river. And we treat all the water in our water treatment plant that's tested to municipal standards on a weekly basis, and then passes through a 3-stage filtration system in the water for the water machines, and you end up with a lovely fresh glass of sparkling still water for your drive.
Well, one more question I have for you is regarding now. I mean, it's early days. You've got South Africans slowly but surely becoming aware, or kind of braving this brave new world that we have to now deal with, going out and experiencing MalaMala. How do you find your South African guests are compared to your overseas guests in terms of what their expectations are, what they want to see, how they want to see it? Is there a big difference, or are you finding it's quite similar?
I find it is quite similar. There are quite a few guests that have come to MalaMala where the opportunity wasn't really there for them in the past, because we catered mainly for overseas markets. But this has now opened up this opportunity where a lot of people in South Africa know of MalaMala, they know the name, and want to come here and experience it, appreciate being out there in the bush, and seeing everything that we have to offer here. Guests can always be easy or difficult, but for the most part, there's sort of the number of easy or difficult guests has not changed. It's still the same, and people are still coming here for the great game viewing here. Yeah, it really hasn't changed all that much. These South Africans have got a little bit more background knowledge of the bush. It does also allow the rangers to stretch their legs a little bit when it comes to their bird knowledge, their tree knowledge, their ecology knowledge. So it allows us to speak, when you say, for example, with the Pride of Lions, not so much about the facts about lions, but the facts about the pride as a sort of social structure and the history of that pride. We've also, since 1965, been keeping daily records of all the animals that have been seen on the property. So we've got quite an extensive database of who's related to who and where these prides were formed, and how they split up, and how new prides either came onto the property, or when they came onto the property, or how they split. And, so there is that whole backstory behind it that also the South Africans enjoy a lot. We've got all the fans of the YouTube channel and various other sort of social media networks where they follow the social structures of these lions or leopards or whatever it might be, and sometimes they'll come and tell us a few things that we didn't know, because they're watching our neighbours' documentaries and also picking up on their story as well. So we've got to make sure our facts are straight because we're being audited all the time by the South Africans, and I say a lot more so than the overseas guests.
Well, I think it's a fantastic thing to actually bear in mind, is that you've you don't have to just come in and watch an episode when you come and visit. You can actually get the full story by going onto YouTube, watching a lot of the content that you have put out, and like you were saying, there's actually almost like a storyline that's already running, and when you do come here, you can almost be part of that storyline and kind of get to see it firsthand. So if you are listening to this, if you're sitting overseas, if you're in South Africa, maybe get onto the MalaMala YouTube channel, have a look at some of those videos that have gone out, and I think there's tons of content out there that has documented some of the lion prides that have come and gone through this area, some of them that are still active at the moment. So when you get here, you can almost sort of pick up on the storyline and kind of be part of that. Bruce Missing, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the podcast, Head Ranger here at MalaMala, and thank you for your time.
No, thank you very much.
All right, it's time to get into our weekly events guide, and I think it's getting fuller and fuller, which means that things are getting busier and busier. Let's kick off with Madison Avenue in Rivonia. They're hosting their Little White Lies event on Friday, 16 October 2020. Then Social Bryanston is hosting a bottomless brunch for 300 Rand with bottomless specials and some live music from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. and that's on a Sunday. Then Billy the Bum's Four Ways is having their summer vibes this weekend, kicking off on Thursday with DJs every evening from 9 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. Then Radisson Hotel Gautrain, they're having their Gin U Wine. Get that, Gin U Wine, this Saturday, 17th of October 2020, and table bookings can be made through info@joburglife.co.za. Then Altitude Beach Club, as always, in Four Ways, open this weekend from Thursday to Sunday, 12 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. with an array of DJs including Lala Hirayama, Mo Flavor, and more. Bookings are limited and no under 23s. The Beach Rivonia is hosting Band on the Sand this Saturday, 17 October 2020, from 3:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. with some great deals on cocktails and gin and tonics. And then the Grand Rivonia trading from Monday to Sunday from 12 noon to midnight. Entrance fee includes food and is 750 Rand. And that's your weekend events guide for this weekend. Right, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Time for us to wrap it up here at MalaMala Game Reserve, and what a wonderful stay we've had. If I could just tell you, the decor of the rooms has been wonderful, so contemporary yet so African, and it's just been such a wonderful stay in the rooms. If you look at, I can't even begin to tell you about the amenities, so we'll get into that at some point, but the amenities were also just really stunning, really stellar. They smelled fantastic, they felt fantastic. Then the food, we chatted about the food briefly, but just great home food, and also it just had a general very homely feel the entire stay, which was really wonderful. If you do get a chance, I really encourage you to make a plan to make your way to MalaMala Game Reserve while things are still in the process of opening up, whilst there's still space and time for South Africans to come and visit. Just find out. Don't prejudge it. Don't think, oh, you know what, like it might not be, in our budget range, or we might not have time, or whatever the usual excuses are. Go and have a look and just check it out on their website, and yeah, it's an experience. Let me tell you, you can even fly in. They've got a landing strip, So if you don't feel like driving all the way here, well, you can get a flight and you can fly in and fly out, so you don't waste any time in terms of game viewing. But if you've been listening today, thank you so much for making the time to be part of this podcast, for listening to this podcast. A big thank you to my guests and also once again to our hosts. We're heading back to the big city. Let's connect again next week in Sandton. But for now, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and stay safe.